What you see behind me is a Toyota RAV4, and you're probably thinking, a RAV4? How interesting can that be? Well, let me tell you what, guys, you have no idea. This is the RAV4 Prime, and if you're ever at a stoplight wanting to race a RAV4, you better not race one with the word Prime on the back. Toyota says this is the second quickest car they make. That's right, the RAV4 Prime does 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds according to Toyota. A four-door compact crossover does 0 to 60 miles an hour faster than some Ferraris from just 30 years ago. Now for the question you all want to know, how does 300 horsepower of RAV4 drive? I can't tell you because driving impressions are embargoed until early July. I just wanted to give you a very exclusive first look at this super unique model and show you through the cool features that you need to know about. The Prime is a hybrid RAV4, which means it uses both gas and electric motors. However, this is a hybrid on steroids because it's a plug-in hybrid, which means while it uses the same 2.5 liter gasoline engine as every other RAV4 on the road, the battery in this one is massive. The RAV4 Prime is what they call a plug-in hybrid, which means that this vehicle can run entirely on electricity for an extended period of time, up to 42 miles, according to Toyota. Now, what this means is that you can actually plug it into your wall and let it charge overnight, and it uses your standard J1772 plug with probably the largest charge door I have ever seen. So, with 42 miles of electric range, this car can be driven using no gasoline whatsoever. However, don't stress. If you forget to plug it in or if the battery dies, it's still going to drive normally. It's just going to drive like a regular hybrid using that gasoline engine when it needs to. All this means is that this car has two fuel doors, one on the left for gasoline and one on the right for electricity. And Toyota says that this RAV4 will get up to 94 mpge. Let's talk about how you charge the RAV4 Prime. First of all, you have to unlock the car, and then you push in on the charge port, and it opens up, and you've got this little dongle you pull out. Now the RAV4 has a 3 kilowatt onboard charger, and they supply you with a standard plug. It's blue, very blue. You plug that in, and then you can plug this other end into your, your normal 3-prong house outlet. That's one way to charge the RAV4. And then to remove the actual charge connector, you have to unlock the vehicle again and pull it out. So that is an option if you want. However, it is possible to do this a little bit differently because we are out here at a charge point, which is a very common charger that you'll find at various businesses around the US. Okay, so at these charge points, you can use mobile pay, which I just did right there. I'm gonna unplug it, and then I can charge it using 240 volts as well. Just like that. And then you can see it actually locks in place. So if I try to remove it, it won't let me. We're gonna start the list of the RAV4 Prime's really cool features with the key. And at first it looks like a standard key. It says RAV4 on the back, nothing too special. That is until you turn it over and look very closely, because you have your standard lock, unlock, and then your trunk button. But you also have a button here that says hold AC. And when I hold this button, it beeps, and then you hear the car whir to life. And now I am cooling off the cabin of the car all through one touch of a button on the key. This is awesome. This is like remote start, but rather than having an engine running, polluting, and creating all sorts of bad stuff for the environment, I can use that massive battery in the RAV4 Prime to cool off the cabin before I even get in the car. This is brilliant for places like Arizona and Texas, where it gets extremely hot in the summer and you don't want to scorch your butt off getting in the car. To get inside the RAV4, just put the key in your pocket, grab the door handle, it'll beep twice, and then you can enter into a nice cool environment because I've already turned the AC on with the key. And quite honestly, it looks like a normal RAV4 in here until you start looking closely. And we're going to start with the gauges. Now, the gauges seem pretty cool to begin with. You've got a big 7-inch screen here in the center, which displays your speedometer. On the right top edge of the gauge cluster, you'll notice a fuel gauge. But the right bottom, that's your battery gauge. That shows you how much percentage of battery remains in that large high voltage power battery. This panel right here controls the drive operation of the RAV4 Prime. It's very important, and there are some cool buttons. And we're going to start with this right one, which looks like a card out of Uno with a little switchy thing. But this switches the vehicle from EV mode, or electric vehicle mode, to HV mode, or hybrid vehicle mode. In EV, the car is going to run entirely on electricity. In HV, it's going to alternate between electricity and gas as it sees fit. There's also a charge hold button here, and if I push and hold it, it then puts the vehicle into a setting which recharges the high voltage battery with the gas motor. So for example, it just turned on the gas motor. However, this left button is a little bit more sophisticated. This is the Auto EV HV. And basically, this one's going to optimize the system to run on EV or electric mode when it sees fit, and then hybrid mode when it also deems the conditions to be suitable. If you're ever confused on what mode your RAV4 is operating in, Toyota gives you this really cool energy monitor, and this will show you exactly where both the gas power and electric power is going. So for example, if I put it into the charging mode, you will see the engine will kick on, and now it's sending power into the battery, charging up the main high voltage power in the battery. This is a really cool system, and it actually shows something interesting. When I turn the AC on, you get this little fan, and that's a reminder that the air conditioning uses a lot of power. And you definitely know that the AC system uses a lot of power based on the distance to empty estimate. This tells you how many miles the car will go on electric and hybrid modes. So for example, right now on EV only, the car will go 28 miles. On the hybrid system, it'll go a combined 540 miles. But then if I turn on the AC, that 28 miles turns to 26 miles in my distance to empty display, and it yells at me with a picture of a fan letting me know I'm not being as efficient as I could be. Alright, so that's all the different electric vehicle, hybrid vehicle, charge, hold, auto, EV, HV buttons, but there are a couple of other ones which are much easier to understand. There are 3 different drive modes. There's a sport mode, which turns everything in the display red, pretty cool stuff. An eco mode, which turns everything in the display green, and then a normal mode, of course. Now, I'm being a little bit facetious. These different modes do control various things in the vehicle, and there's even, check this out, a trail mode, which turns everything in the center gauge into rocks, and that's for a little bit of off-road use if you so desire. There is another cool display in the RAV4. If I scroll down a couple of clicks in the menu, you can see something called the EV driving ratio, and that shows you what percentage of the time you spend driving in electric mode only. Pretty cool. The higher the number, the cheaper it will be to drive this car. The inside of the RAV4 is a nice place to spend time, and you can definitely tell that the Prime is targeted more at sporty driving because everything is covered in red stitching. You got red stitching on the dash, red stitching on the steering wheel, and red stitching on these cloth bucket seats. And let me tell you what, these seats are extremely supportive, especially for a crossover. One thing I love about the RAV4 is that all the buttons feel extremely premium. Take, for example, these knobs that control the climate control. They're textured with these little horizontal slats. Well, they're really diagonal, and they're all over the place. So both the driver and the passenger have these textured knobs, but they're also up here on the infotainment screen. So you have one here for the volume knob and one over there for the tune knob. They just feel really good to hold, really nice to turn. There are a number of interesting buttons hidden here on the left by the driver's knee, which do some cool things. So let's start with this button. This is for the automatic brights, but there's also a button here, which is a button I don't think I've ever seen in any car. And this one is a little squiggly next to a picture of a windshield wiper. And this turns on the heated windshield wipers. And if you look on the front, you'll see the windshield wipers rest on these little heating elements so that in the winter, they won't freeze over. Thoughtful touch. Then this one has a blank here, and then a heated steering wheel button as well as a power liftgate. The back seat of the RAV4 Prime is amazing. It's the only word for it. I can't express to you how much space there is. I am 6 foot 1 inch tall, huge amounts of headroom, a tremendous amount of legroom, inches of legroom, even behind my driving position here. And check this out, the seat actually even reclines a little bit so you can get extra comfortable as a rear passenger in the RAV4. And there's also a bunch of interesting features. The RAV4 comes standard with Toyota's E all-wheel drive. And what that means is there's no drive shaft between the front engine and the rear end. In fact, there's just an electric motor in the rear that is in charge of powering the rear wheels. So what this means is there's no huge center hump for a drive shaft to run through. Instead, you just get a small hump. And it's interesting, this one is actually covered in a plastic material. This RAV4 also has heated rear seats. Both of the outboard seats are heated, and you push this button down, the light illuminates, and then you've got seat heating in the back of your Prime. Unfortunately, the driver's back does not have a cubby for storage, but there are two USBs located right here in the center, which is a great thing to have if you're a kid or someone in the back who needs to charge a tablet or a phone. Let's talk about how to get into the trunk of the Prime. There are 3 ways to do it. In the front seat, there's a button by the driver's knee. There's also, of course, the button here on the key fob, or you can push the little pad under the Toyota logo. And the tailgate rises into life just like that, revealing a very large trunk. Now, some interesting things back here you'll notice. They give you a space saver spare tire, that's good to see. Here's a relay and a fuse box, as well over there on the driver's side, some tools for changing the flat. You also get a nice little cargo cover back here. But the coolest feature has to do with this tailgate, because so often have I gone to reach for a electric tailgate, grabbed it, the motors fight you, the car screams at you, it gets so mad. Not in the Prime. You see, if I grab the tailgate and start moving it downward, it figures it out and finishes the job for me. That's really good engineering. The RAV4 Prime looks extremely similar to the standard RAV4 Hybrid, but how do you know that this one will do 0 to 60 in 5.7 versus about 7.8 with the standard Hybrid? Well, there are a couple of small differences. Take, for example, the front end. We've got this low silver air dam here on the front of the Prime, which doesn't exist on the Hybrid. And there's also a little light blade that extends down here along the side of the Prime that you won't find on the Hybrid. Well, not exactly, because this one is the SE trim, which doesn't get the light blade. You have to step up to the XSE for that cool little detail. Another difference here on the driver's side, you'll see a badge that says plug-in hybrid. And then of course you get the Prime logo here on the rear, but this really is a sleeper of a vehicle. You'd have no idea that this car has 302 horsepower by looking at the badging. But thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know in the comment section below, what do you think of this berserk crossover SUV? For a $38,100 starting price, I think it's one heck of a good deal. Head over to tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.